Yep, we're
Hello,
live.
everyone. We are live right now for the Fridays Author Live chat with fans. So today we have Author Dan Bar Hava with us to talk about his book, and we also have Dr. Wesley Britton and also Jesse Frankel to review Dan's book. So Dan's book is entitled "The 36 Watches." So all three of us actually read Dan's book. So we will be reviewing and also giving some feedback on Dan's book today. So Dan, could you actually tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into your book to discuss about your book today?
Of course, sure. Thank you for having me here. So I'm originally from Israel. I was born and raised in Jerusalem,
Uh-huh.
and I moved to New York City in my late 20s um, to pursue, first and foremost, music and other creative endeavors. And
Uh-huh.
I've been calling New York City home for a long time,
Mhm.
since the 1990s.
Mhm.
I've been doing music here, and I've been doing other creative endeavors. I also co-wrote a couple of scripts. One of them was made into a movie called Falling Star.
Mhm.
And I wrote this book, The 36 Watchers, Book One, Fall, started a while ago. It started in 2012. It was finished in 2016, and it took about 1 or 2 years to find a good publisher and a home for the book. And I'm excited to share about the book and to hear feedback about the book today.
Awesome. Right. So also about your experience in filmmaking, right? So we do know that you have quite an extensive experience in filmmaking. So could you like explain to us a little bit about that, and also about the central character in the movies that you have done, and also in the book? And I think it has some sort of correlations between the two, right? And how filmmaking has actually influenced your book.
That's a really, really good question. So I wrote books before I wrote films, but the books I wrote before I wrote films were not very good. I did not feel like they were worthy of publication, and I started to write scripts when I was in New York. Maybe that would be about 15 years ago or so at this point. And the first script that I wrote was very much mystery, suspense, thriller, and supernatural, not unlike the 36 Watchers. The problem is that it was a script that was very, very expensive to produce, and it went nowhere because it cost too much money. So I ended up writing another script with a couple other people, and this was loosely based on my experiences playing piano and playing shows in hotels in upstate New York. It's a romantic comedy known as Falling Star with a very nice cast. We have there Adam Pascal, who was the star of Rent. We have there Natasha Lyonne, who is the star of Orange is the New Black, and a lot of other good people. I have to say that when you write scripts, you have to think about what it will look like on the screen and what it would cost to do and how will it be produced and post-produced. And that puts a lot of freedom on you because on the one hand, you will see it. And seeing is an amazing venue and medium. When you write a book, people will have to visualize and picture what it is that you talk about. But on the other hand, when you write a book, you're limited by your imagination. So there's no budget question. If you want a $20 million starship to land in the middle of New York City, you can write that in. And then if people want to make that into a movie, it's going to be their problem. So this is fundamentally the difference between writing a book and writing a movie. Also,
Awesome.
when you write a book, there is you have a duty, I think, to let people know about your characters, to talk about how they think, how they feel, who they are. You have to give them voices. That's a lot of stuff that has to be done with words versus when you do things for screen. Many times your co-writer will say, you don't have to say it. You show it on the screen. It will come out anyway. So I've done that in the book, and and it's legitimate claim to say that maybe I've done that a little too much. And I've heard that from people across the spectrum of we like it, and we could use a little more, we could use a little less. So I hope that answers your question as of to the connections and the contradictions and the similarities and differences between the screen and between the small page.
Right. Yes. So, talking about filmmaking and also talking about writing. So, when did you exactly started to write, and what inspired you? I mean, did you start writing first, or yeah, tell us about that. And when
You asking me when did I start to write the 36
correct?
Watchers?
Yes. I mean, when did you
Okay.
start writing books? As in, yeah.
I started to write books when I was very young. I always liked to read. I actually made it. I made it an honor and a duty to myself to go to the Jerusalem Public Library and read all the books there, A to Z, between fourth grade and high school, and I did that. So I started to write also at a very young age, but none of this was worthy. It was not good. I wrote it, and then I read it, and then I junked it. So the first book I worked on seriously from start to finish is the 36 Watchers. And the idea was cooking in me for a long, long time because I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person. And I always felt like there are things that exist in the world that A, we do not know enough about, and B, I always felt that if a myth exists, there is a reason why the myth exists. And I got hints along the way that helped me make sure that this sentiment, this feel, is not in vain. So there are clues, there are life experiences, things that I heard from myself, from other people. And I always thought that there is a deeper layer of reality behind the one that we have. And it was a combination of positive things that happened to me and to my world and negative things that happened to me and to my world that made me finally sit down and write this book. It was cooking for years, and it was cooking before, during, and after the events of 9/11 that happened in New York, which affected me very deeply because I just came back from Israel 2 days prior on September 9, 2001. And Israel was in chaos. There were bombings. There was violence. There was a lot of bad things happening. I came here to what I thought was tranquility, calm, and peace. And then 2 days later, what happened had a deep effect on me. So it propelled me forward to keep thinking about what else is there other than the reality that we see. And it took about a decade to mature. And then I was back in Israel in 2012. I was in an apartment in Tel Aviv overlooking the Mediterranean, nice summer night. My laptop was open, and the first 2 chapters of the book wrote themselves. And from that point on, it took me a few more years to combination of research and writing and deleting to finalize the book about 2016, about 3 years ago.
Right. That's pretty interesting because when I was reading your book, I can see that you mentioned a lot about the 9/11 incidents, like here and there. So 9/11 is something that I believe it is something that you wanted to incorporate in the book from the beginning. It has impacted you in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So tell us about the journey of coming up, the idea. Where did you get the idea of, like, wanting to tell people about the possibility of something else that can happen in life, like to bring us into the whole lot of other journeys. So tell us about that.
That's a good question. And like I said before, I'm always fascinated by myth. Myth is very, very fascinating to me. And I'm also fascinated by what people put into traditions that are folkloristic, religious, esoteric, and there's a strong connection between all those and myth. And specifically in Judaic traditions, there's a strong connection to letters and numbers. There is a numeric system that assigns value to every letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And there's a lot of examples about how this works. And I'm not going to bore you because that's going to be sidetracking us.
Correct.
But when you think about the myth of the 36, that's a myth that exists from the Jewish Talmud, so it's 16 or 1700-year-old myth. And the nice thing about that myth is that in every tradition, in every culture, we have saviors. We have Mithras, we have Jesus, we have Muhammad, we have Rama, we have King Arthur. But in that particular tradition, the 36 are nameless, faceless. You don't know who they are. And the Talmud goes to say that in every generation they exist. So it's not necessarily always the same people. And then you take the numbers themselves, the 3 and the 6. The number 3 is the sacred number, it's the Holy Trinity. The number 6 is the opposite of that, because everybody knows that in the Revelation, the book of St. John, the number of the beast is 666. And from music, there is another concept that has to do with the devil, which also ties to the number 6, which I'm not going to go into. So you put the 3 and the 6 together, you got the divine and the diabolical together in that myth of the 36. That had me thinking for a long time about how I could manifest it into a story, and certain other events, including 9/11, including other events, affected that. And in honesty, people ask me that for the last 6 months, how did it come to you? Actual writing? I don't remember. I remember the first couple chapters writing themselves. I don't know what I was thinking about the 5 or 10 minutes before I started writing. What I'm telling you now is what I was thinking about the 6 or 7 or 8 years before I started writing.
Ah, right. So I think it is a combination of the fascination that you have for myth and also the recent incidents of the past 8 years, the things that has happened in New York and all of that actually, you kind of like you've gotten the inspiration from all that, right? So um, speaking about publishing, right? So could you walk us through your decisions about how you wrote your book, about the editing process, and who the editors that you chose, and whether you self-published or you choose to traditionally publish your book. So probably could you briefly walk us through the process that you
Sure. I knew that I needed serious editing because I get very deep in everything I do. Nothing that I do is light. I don't cook lightly. I don't play piano lightly. I don't take a trip lightly, and I don't write lightly. So I knew that I needed serious editing. It took time to find a wonderful guy that a friend recommended me. He just retired. He was a proofer and an editor for a big law firm. And him and I had a lot of discussions. And when I finished it with him, only at that point I felt like it was worthy enough to try to shop for a publisher. I looked at self-publishing and I figured out that I don't want to do that because I think that I will need the assistance of a publisher. And I did find a publisher, and I'm going to share the story of how this happened. Because I sent it to this publisher and they sent me something in the mail that they liked it and they wanted to get into a publication agreement with me, and I don't do that. I have to sit across the table from the person. And I called them and I told them, and they said they don't do that. They're willing to take me on, but it's not in their policy to have live meetings with a new author only after we sign an agreement that is negotiated via phone and email. And I did not take that as an answer, so I went downtown to 40 Wall Street, New York City, and I crashed their office. And it was wonderful difficult to get to because it was actually a building that belongs to Trump with a lot of security downstairs. Nobody let me upstairs. I told them I have a contract. I want to talk to them. The guy looked me up and down and said, okay, here's the phone number of the floor. Call the floor manager. I called the floor manager. They let me upstairs. And I went upstairs. They were not there. I left a note. The next day they called me. They said, listen, we're willing to meet you. So I went there again. This time they let me through because it was solicited appointment and not pressing. So I went upstairs with a nice hour and a half discussion, how they want things to be done, how I want things to be done, some more negotiation, and then the deal was done. And that's how I found my publisher.
Ah, awesome. Right. So coming to the feedback that you've received from your audience, or probably from your fans, from your readers, your family and friends, right? So could you like explain to us what kind of feedback that you've received so far, and if you have actually changed the book, or probably the plot, or anything in the book upon receiving their feedback?
Well, I shared the drafts with a select group of people that I trusted their opinion to be straightforward, and I was listening to them as I was writing, and they gave me a nice feedback, primarily about what things to include and what not to include, given that the book is book number one, and I hope to write at least two more in the series if I can, if time and energy will allow me. So they helped me a lot in the sense of what to include in the first book and what to not include and save it for book 2 and 3. I got a lot of help on that. Also, since you deal with supernatural elements, the book has supernatural elements in it, I got some help as to how the supernatural rules work, because you have to create your own world, your own rules, and they have to make sense. So that was very, very helpful, and it helped me during the writing process. After the writing process was done, when the book was published, that feedback now will come handy when I write book 2 and book 3. And I got primarily two kinds of feedback. One kind of feedback is that I need to tone down a little bit the complexity level. That came in from a few people, so I took that to heart, and I'm adjusting to that and thinking about how to do that when I sit down to write next. And then the other thing was that the book is too short, which was somewhat done on purpose, because book 2 and book 3 hopefully will come when I finish them.
Awesome. Right. So probably we can share some of the feedbacks that we have today, right? As we have Jesse and Dr. Wesley to share the feedback, all right, after reading Dan's book. So probably, Jesse, so could you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Well, okay, this is the first book of Dan's I've read, and I want to thank you and him for sending it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a reasonably fast-moving novel, and I don't know a whole lot about Jewish myth, in that I know about the Talmud, but very little compared to him. So getting into the theme itself of the 36 anonymous watchers bridging the gap between humanity and something else, that was very interesting to me. And I liked the pace of the novel. I enjoyed the characters quite a bit, especially the two main characters, Jenna and her uncle. And I thought it was good. So overall, I would say it's a really enjoyable read, and I'd recommend it to anybody. Those were the positive points. And to me, when I write something and when I read something, I want a fairly quick pace. I try, when I write my own novels, now mine are they're a little longer than Dan's is, but that doesn't really matter. in any novel, you tend to bog down a little bit in the middle because there's more exposition. So I try to keep that at a bare minimum. And Dan did that. It did bog down a little, but it didn't really take away from the enjoyment at all. I thought it was just fine. There was exposition at the end, but that was necessary. And I think I mentioned in my review there was a bit of a problem with show, not tell, and vice versa. And I had the same problem myself when I first started out, and I still struggle to keep the balance. We're always taught as writers, show the character's reactions or the feelings or the action itself, whatever, and keep the tell to a bare minimum. But in some cases, you have to tell, and there's no other choice. But I think he did a really great job. It was the first book of his I'd read, and if he comes out with book number 2, 3, and so on in a series, I would like to read them too.
Awesome.
So them my thoughts.
Right. So I think it was fairly quick read because it's just like about 139, 140 pages long, right? So yeah, it's quite so. Probably done. Like, would you like to share with us, like, what you have done for the second book and the third book, or in terms of is it going to be longer? Something like that.
Okay, so I'm actually going to do that. I didn't think I will, but thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate that. And I take to heart the show not tell. I know the show not tell concept very well from the screen, because on the screen you really can show in visual. In a book, now you blew my mind a little bit, and I appreciate that, about the showing character reaction versus telling the character reaction is a concept that I make a serious mental note to myself to address when I sit down to write. So the 36 Watchers, they guide the direction in which the world is going in the ways that described in the book, and Jesse knows what I'm talking about. So does Dr. Britton and Jasmina. There are events that are going to be the center of book 2, and there are events that are going to be the center of book 3. And since book 1 is about 9/11 and the years after, so we're talking about book 2 roughly centers around events that happened maybe 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 years ago, and book 3 that will center around events that happened in the last 5 years. I am considering, and I'd like your honest opinion, all 3, please, to write book 3 before I write book 2, and to release book 3 before I release book 2, because I think it will be an insanely creative thing to do that has not been done yet. So book 3 will be available for the understanding and the knowledge that there's another book between book 1 and book 3. It's not going to be book 2, but it's going to be book 3. But I may want to write that book first. And just as an idea, praise it, shrug it, or kill it.
Right. Okay. So we have heard from Jesse and his opinion about Dan's book, The 36 Watches. So Dr. Wesley,
Hi there.
Dr. Wesley, you've also read Dan's book. So
Yes, I did.
would you like to share your experience reading Dan's book, and probably would you like to review reading his book?
All right, I'm ready to go. Well, I kind of got inspired to start this review from the title when I saw it said fall. And for some reason, that made me think of Alice in Wonderland falling through the looking glass into another reality, because it seems like in Dan's book, there's a lot of different realities fall into, a whole lot of different perceptions and perspectives. And I think for a lot of readers, it's dense. And you've got to be ready for that. You've got to let yourself be challenged by what you're reading, because it doesn't slow down. It keeps adding perspectives, and well, we do have the central characters. I really like Gina. I would like to see more of Stephanie. She disappeared pretty quick, and Gina's uncle Josh is helping kind of groom her for becoming one of those 36 Watchers who've been involved in human history for time immemorial and had a lot of impact on different key events in history. I don't really want to talk about those because I'd be acting kind of a spoiler. But you see things starting off at the beginning as kind of mundane character interactions that kind of move on into the more esoteric and spiritual. I think spiritual is a much better term than the religious, although it's very clear that Dan knows a great deal of a lot of myths and a lot of holy books from around the world and throughout history. And it's very, very rich in that kind of detail. Now, if I was going to have one complaint, is every once in a while he'll take a left turn and I got to pause. What just happened? I had to read this book in chunks because sometimes I would get to a turning point or something and wasn't always clear where he was going because we're talking with Gina and Stephanie, and then all of a sudden we're in Gina's coma, or then something happens. And you've got to pay attention. I did enjoy the book. I like the characters. I like the writing style. I love anthropology and myth and all that sort of stuff. So this was a book that was right down my alley. I was kind of pleased at the end. It is obviously set up for a sequel. There's no way. In fact, the whole book, it seems like it's kind of setting up what's going to be happening in future books. So I would not recommend this for young adult readers. I wouldn't recommend it for those where science fiction, fantasy, whatever term you want, maybe that kind of light space opera kind of stuff, because it's not that at all. It's cerebral, it's intellectual. I noticed a lot of reviews on Amazon kept using the word sophisticated. Well, okay. I don't know what the word sophisticated really means on this case. But, I understand what they're saying in the sense that it's, not your average thriller, if that makes any sense.
Right. So, Dan, coming to the characterization, or probably in the process of developing your characters, right? I mean, Jenna is definitely one of the characters that I also enjoyed reading, right? So I think I like her character. So would you like to explain about how you go about with the character developments and also probably plot developments? So Dan.
Sure. When it comes to characters and character developments, I am a convert. And converts are more fanatic than believers. And I will explain that. Because my first creative endeavors, the first books I wrote and the first screenplays I wrote, I thought about characters literally like talking props. Couldn't care less about them. I only cared about the story. And when people were talking to me about that, I shushed everybody and I said, characters don't matter. The only thing that matters is story. And boy, you cannot be more wrong than that statement. So at some point it turned in me, and I actually honestly cannot tell you when it exactly turned. And then I started to really pay attention a lot to characters. So I had to sit and think a lot. First of all, if the main character of the 36 Watcher is going to be a man or woman, it became very clear to be a woman, because it should be that combination of strength and sensitivity that I think is more abundant in women than in men. And if this is a gender biased opinion, then guilty as charged. So that was the first thing. And then you really had to go into somebody's head and picture Jenna happily living in New York. Everything is good in the world, and how she deals with everything when the world turns upside down. And that was what led me. Of course, there are pieces of Jenna that I know from people around me. There are pieces of Stephanie that I know from people around me. But at the end of the day, you just simply have to get to the point where you feel that you know these people, you feel that they are talking to you, and you feel that they're keeping you company, and then they let you inside their head, and then hopefully you do a job that's good. And I'm happy to say that, I get criticism about being too complex, about my reader all of a sudden asking, like Dr. Britton said, what the hell just happened? I need to go back 2 pages. And that criticism is merited because I like that style. I like to be cerebral, and maybe I like it a little bit too much and have to take it into heart. And when I continue my writing, but to a person, everybody that so far read the book, the first or second or third sentence they say about it is that we love Jenna and we like Josh. And that makes me incredibly happy, very much so.
Right, because I think most of us can actually relate to Jenna's characters because of, I think probably she's the central character in the book, and I think right. So when I was reading the book, I thought that I like the overall storyline. Okay, I like the overall storyline, but I at some point of time I had some difficulties to follow through the book. Like, suddenly in chapter 4, I get hooked on to the book like a lot in chapter 4, and then it slowed down kind of bit, and then it picks up back in chapter 7. So it's something like that, like, the flow of the book is like that. So it was written in such a way, so you feel like you're sinking a bit here and there, and then suddenly you are like, oh wow, something is happening, right? So but despite that, I feel like you have a very solid storyline. Like I enjoyed reading that until the end of the book, because I want to know more about what's going on. It kept me going, right? So that is the only thing that I felt was a bit lacking. But other than that, it was a very enjoyable quick read, and I think if you ask me, I would want to know more about what's happening with Jenna, and I would want to see more of Jenna in book 2 and also in book 3. So, which is something very intriguing, and also the concept of the 36 watches, and also how you have incorporated so many different elements into that book is something. It's eye-opening, because I think I've not read something like that before, and reading that for the first time, it makes me think that, oh wow, okay, I didn't know something like this existed before. And events or incidents like 9/11 and also the Titanic, and thinking about how things could have been different, if we were to look at the other perspective. So um, it's really interesting, because anyone who thinks that this book, because initially when I saw the title of the book, and also when I read the blurb of your book, I thought it's going to be something about a little bit about religious book, right? But as I was reading the book, I understood that it has got nothing much to do about religion, but it's more about the whole concept behind it. So it's definitely fascinating to read that. I think it would appeal to anyone who would want to know more about something that is not conventional, something that is not typical, right? So it's not a typical idea over there, and it's something really refreshing, something really new. So that is what I thought when I read your book. So which is why I was pretty much intrigued about your second book and also the third book. How long is it gonna be? And so maybe Dan, I thought of asking you, when are you planning to like publish the subsequent books, and your writing process right now? Where are you at this point of time?
Wow. Okay. So book 2, I have the outline of book 2. It's done. I also sketched the ending of book 2 because it ends in a very particular historical event that I confiscated to the purpose of the book, and it fits in very nicely. So the book 2 is outline. Between outline and writing, I would say, in my experience, and Dr. Britton and Jesse, you guys tell me what you guys think. It's between 10 to 20 hours per page to write.
Oh, that's a long time.
That would be my. I like to put numbers on everything.
That's a
So-
long time for what just one page.
I don't. Yeah, I've different. For me, it's different. For my book series, I had it all in my head before I started writing, so the writing was very quick.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours, whatever, per page? I wouldn't have calculated that. Wouldn't have occurred to me.
Yeah, I like to put numbers on everything because I do a lot of stuff with music. When people ask me how long does it take to record a song, I say if you have a 3-minute song, it's 10 hours per minute. So I go with this. So the book is out there. I would say that if I write a 150-page book, then it's going to take me a couple thousand hours. If I write 10 hours a week, it's going to take me 4 years. If I write 20 hours a week, it's going to take me 2 years. If I write 30 hours a week, it's going to take me 18 months. So I don't know that I'm right, but I estimate that between me and the publishing of the next book, there is a year or two. Book 3 is conceptualized, but not out. The reason why I want to do book 3 first, maybe, is because the events are closer to our timeline in our reality. Maybe there's an appeal there, but I'm not sure. So at this point, I'm contemplating in between those two. I'm still very much in the process of doing what we're doing, of promoting book 1. And that takes a lot of time and energy out of me. But I will probably going to say that I'm going to start my serious writing in the spring, either the book 2 or book 3. I think 3 or 4 months from now. And in no small part, due to the feedback I've been getting, and the feedback I've been getting in no small part is what is happening in this podcast as well. And I thank you for that.
It's a
Right.
good thing. If I can say something.
Yeah, sure,
Oh,
Jesse.
I'm sorry. There's a bit of a time lag here. When I started writing, I never really looked for feedback from anybody, and I haven't been writing that long. Seriously, only about 5 years. It's only the last 2 or 3 years that I actually courted feedback from the reviewers or people on Facebook or people elsewhere. And as Dan said, feedback is so important. I write much faster than he does. I write about 5,000 words a day. So I can finish the first draft of a book in roughly 3 weeks if I really push it. And after that, I spend another 2 or 3 weeks polishing it to the best of my ability and getting it out. And my books are sort of short. They average about 67,500 words, give or take. So it's not an opus. It's not a novella like Dan's is. Dan's is like, it's not a novella. It's not a novel. It's sort of right in that gray area. But it's a very fast read, which is what I appreciate. I just have a different system of writing, and like Dan, I conceptualize the whole thing in my head. I know how it's going to start. I know what the penultimate chapter is going to be about, and how I'm going to set up the showdown, so to speak. And I know what the final chapter or epilogue will be about. The middle part gives me fits, and that takes the longest. But as he said, everybody has to go with their own pace. And so if you're going to stick a number on it, okay, 20 hours per page, 5 hours per 10 pages, whatever. The key thing is, as long as you get your thoughts down and get the story there, get the characters right, get the action right, then, really, who cares how long it takes? As long as it's good. That's the key thing. And that's my biggest want in life, to write something good and ask for feedback from beta readers or reviewers. Well, what did you think? And, I get what I get.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank
Right.
you.
So I think talking about beta readers, right? I think Jesse has actually pointed a very good aspect over here, which is to get feedback from reliable beta readers. So Dan, or probably maybe I would ask Jesse, like, how do you go about selecting your beta readers, and to what extent do you actually take the feedbacks from your beta readers in order to perfect your, I mean, I wouldn't say perfect, but to make your manuscript better, right? So how does that process work for you so far? I think maybe we can hear from Jesse, because I think Jesse, you are also an editor, right, yourself?
Yes.
So could you like probably share your experience with
Okay.
us?
Well, when I first started out, seriously, I didn't use beta readers, and looking back on it, I should have, because it
Mm-hmm.
would have saved me a lot of grief in certain areas, such as
Mm-hmm.
character development or info dumping or what have you. Um, a recent novel of mine, which is a lesfic novel, it's a gender switch novel, but it verges into lesfic, really, science fiction and fantasy. It's all of those genres together. I had to get feedback from some women who write lesbian fiction because I didn't want to inadvertently offend anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the last thing I wanted. And even my wife told me, she said, well, talk to the experts.
Mm-hmm.
So I contacted three women I know on Facebook, all of whom are writers, all of whom are avid readers, and they all know my style.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent the rough copy to them, and I said, well, basically, don't tell me what I'm doing right, tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they all read it, and they all said, okay, you should fix here, here, and here, and cut this part here and here. So they all agreed on certain aspects unanimously.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I knew what to cut out, and I knew what to reword. And then I sent the book in, and even though the sales have been, the reviews have been very good, and I
Mm-hmm.
take pride in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, to the best of my knowledge, nobody has been offended, and the reviews have been unanimously good to great, so I can't complain. But that, to me, if you're doing a topic that you're not familiar with, in my case, then you need beta reading, and you need to work on that feedback, and you need to take it apart.
Mm-hmm.
If it, if it has substance, if they're just saying, "Well, I don't like it," then you can sort of dismiss that. But they gave
Mm-hmm.
me constructive criticism, and I learned what to do. And I thought, when the book came out finally a few months back, I was very proud of the final result.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, beta readers are prime if you can get them. You need
Uh-huh.
that.
Right. So thank you,
Just me,
Jesse.
I need to let you guys know that my data is almost out here, so I may disappear.
Oh,
So
okay,
if I
right.
do
So we will make it very quick, right? So um, Dan, do you have any message that you wanna tell the viewers out there, or probably would you wanna share your the links to your website, or probably your Amazon? So would you want to share that to us right now?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to
Mm-hmm.
thank you because it's been wonderful. I just got this text from Verizon that telling me that my data is almost over, which is
Okay.
why I know the evil empire. My book is on Amazon, The 36 Watchers, Book
Yes.
One, Fall. It's easy to find. It's
Mhm.
also Barnes and Noble and Goodreads and many other bookstores, but Amazon is where people shop, so we can
Mhm.
go there. And I'm very inspired and heartened and grateful for this experience. All you, Dr. Britton, Jesse,
Mhm.
Justina, and I will be in touch. And thank you so much. It's really appreciated.
Awesome. So thank you for joining Dan, Jesse, and also Dr. Wesley today. And despite having some technical difficulties to go live on Facebook, I'm so sorry about that, because it's really an unexpected technical difficulties. I did not see that coming, right? So I'm so sorry about that. But we are live right now on YouTube, and as soon as this broadcast is over, it's going to be available for replay. So Dan, you can actually send the link to YouTube to anyone who wants to watch this interview. They can watch it right after we end the broadcast. So it should be available on YouTube, and I've also attached. Probably you can see down there in the comment box, right? The link to Dan's book on Austin Macaulay's website, which is the publisher of Dan's book, right? So, so you can check out more about Dan on that link, using that link. And I think so. Before we end, I would like to thank all of you joining us in today's show. Thank you so much, Jesse, Dr. Wesley, and also most importantly, Dan, for joining us for today's show as the guest. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful weekend ahead.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
all.
Thank you.
Pretty
Bye-bye.
thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.